She was 94 years old, lying on frozen concrete outside First National Bank, and when the manager stepped over her body without a single glance, Evelyn Rose Carter felt something inside her finally break. It wasn't her hip, though that ached from the cold pavement. It wasn't her heart, though it had been shattered so many times she'd lost count. It was something deeper, the last fragile thread of hope that someone, anyone, might see her as human. She'd been a nurse for 43 years. She'd saved lives, delivered babies, held dying hands with tenderness and grace. And now she was invisible, a crumpled heap of old bones and worn fabric that people literally stepped over on their way to deposit their paychecks. But what happened in the next 17 minutes would tear this town apart, because a camera was watching, and what it captured, the cruelty, the indifference, the moment that manager came back outside would make millions of people weep with rage. She had been there since 3 in the morning. Evelyn Rose Carter, lying against the cold brick wall of First National Bank, her thin body curled into itself for warmth that wouldn't come. The October wind cut through her threadbare wool coat like it wasn't even there, and her hands, gnarled with arthritis, spotted with age, trembling from cold and hunger, clutched a small leather purse against her chest. The purse was all she had left. Inside was her ID, $73 in cash that had to last 2 more weeks, a photograph of Arthur on their wedding day 52 years ago, and her ATM card for the checking account that held exactly $216. Her entire world reduced to what could fit in a purse smaller than a loaf of bread. She wasn't sleeping. People always assumed homeless people were sleeping, but Evelyn was wide awake, her pale blue eyes staring at the ATM alcove entrance, waiting for 6:30 when the security guard would arrive, waiting for 9 o'clock when the bank would open, waiting to access her own money, money she'd earned, money that was legally hers so she could buy the blood pressure medication that kept her alive. The medication cost $94. Without insurance, without the Medicare Part D coverage she'd lost when she couldn't afford the monthly premium, $94 might as well have been $9,000. She'd been at the Elm Street shelter until midnight, had walked there at 11, her legs screaming with every step, only to find the doors locked and a sign that said, "Curfew, 11:45 p.m." She'd been 15 minutes late, 15 minutes that meant the difference between a warm cot and a cold sidewalk. The volunteer had cracked the door, apologized through the gap, explained the rules as if Evelyn didn't already know them. "Try the warming center on Oak Street," the woman had said. Her voice genuinely sympathetic but ultimately useless. The warming center was 2.3 miles away. Evelyn had walked it once, 2 months ago, and had arrived with her feet bleeding through her worn shoes. She couldn't do it again. Not tonight, not at 94, not when every step felt like shattered glass in her knees. So she'd walk to First National instead, to the one place where she had something, money, access, a reason to exist in the eyes of the system. She'd settled against the wall in the ATM alcove, pulled her coat tight, and prepared to wait 6 hours for the bank to open. She hadn't always been here. That was the thing that haunted her in the dark hours. She hadn't always been this invisible woman people stepped over. She'd been someone. She'd mattered. Evelyn Rose Carter, RN, County General Hospital, night shift, 43 years of service. She'd held newborns in her hands seconds after they took their first breath. She'd administered CPR that restarted hearts. She'd sat with terminal patients in their final moments, holding their hands, whispering that it was okay to let go, that someone was there, that they weren't alone. She'd been important, necessary, seen. She'd married Arthur Carter when she was 22 years old, and they'd bought a house in the Riverside neighborhood, a modest 2-bedroom with a yard just big enough for tomatoes and roses. They'd raised 2 sons there, Michael and Daniel. Smart boys. Michael was in Seattle now, something with computers, 6-figure salary, big house. Daniel was in Chicago, married with 3 kids, doing well. They called on Christmas, sometimes on her birthday. They didn't know she was homeless. She hadn't told them. What could they do? Michael had his own family. Daniel had college tuition to worry about. She wouldn't burden them. That's what mothers do. They protect their children, even when they're the ones drowning. Arthur had died 18 years ago. Massive heart attack while watching the evening news. Gone before the ambulance arrived, but they'd tried anyway. Tried to restart his heart in the ER. Tried for 47 minutes while Evelyn stood in the corner, still in her nurse's scrubs from her shift, watching them work on her husband with the clinical detachment of someone who'd seen it 1,000 times, and the devastating grief of someone watching their entire world end. The bills had been catastrophic. $23,000 after Medicare. She'd paid it, every penny, from their savings. It had taken 4 years. Then her own body had betrayed her. Arthritis that started as an annoyance and became debilitating. Her hands couldn't grip syringes anymore, couldn't start IVs, couldn't do the delicate work nursing required. She'd retired at 76 later than most because she needed the income and had lived on her small pension and Social Security, $1,300 a month. It had been enough. Barely, when the house was paid off. But then the property taxes had increased. The neighborhood had gentrified young families with money, fixing up old houses, driving values up. Her taxes had tripled in 5 years. She'd tried a reverse mortgage, but the terms were predatory. She'd tried to sell, but the house needed repairs. She couldn't afford a roof, electrical work, a kitchen that hadn't been updated since 1975. Buyers kept walking away. The bank had foreclosed 3 years ago. First National Bank, actually. The same bank she was lying outside of right now. They'd given her 30 days to vacate the home she'd lived in for 67 years. She'd moved into a studio apartment that smelled like mildew and mouse droppings. $1,200 a month, not including utilities. She'd managed for 2 years on her $1,300 monthly income. $100 for food, medication, everything else. Then the rent had increased to $1,350, then $1,400, then $1,500. 6 months ago, she'd been evicted. 6 months of shelters and doorways and park benches. 6 months of learning to make herself invisible because visibility meant trouble. Police telling her to move, teenagers throwing bottles, other homeless people stealing what little she had. 6 months of her body deteriorating, her medications running out, her dignity eroding like soil in the rain. This morning, lying on the concrete at 3:15 a.m., Evelyn had felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not hope. Hope was a luxury for people with options. But determination. Her Social Security had been deposited yesterday, $1,300. She needed to get to it before something else went wrong, before some automatic payment she'd forgotten about drained the account, before the universe found another way to kick her while she was down. At 6:45, the security guard arrived. Evelyn heard his footsteps, heavy and purposeful, and struggled to sit up. Her body didn't want to cooperate. 94-year-old joints don't work well after lying on frozen concrete for 3 hours. She managed to prop herself against the wall, her hands shaking violently, her breath coming in white clouds. The security guard was young, maybe 30, built like a linebacker. His name tag said, Marcus. He stopped when he saw her, and for one brief moment, Evelyn saw something flicker across his face. Concern? Pity? But then it was gone, replaced by the practiced neutrality of someone who'd been trained not to get involved. Ma'am, you can't be here. His voice wasn't unkind, but it wasn't kind either, just factual. I'm waiting for the bank to open, Evelyn said, her voice hoarse from the cold. I need to access my account. The bank doesn't open until 9. You need to move along. I don't have anywhere else to go. The words came out smaller than she intended. Please, I'll just sit here quietly. I won't bother anyone. Marcus shifted his weight. Uncomfortable. Ma'am, I have to enforce the rules. No loitering. You need to leave the premises. But this is my bank. My money is in there. Evelyn fumbled with her purse, trying to show him her ATM card with fingers that wouldn't cooperate. I just need to wait until it opens. You can come back at 9. Right now, you need to go. Go where? The question came out sharper than she intended, edged with desperation. Where exactly am I supposed to go? Wenley. Marcus didn't answer. He just stood there, waiting for her to comply, his hand resting on his belt near his radio. The unspoken threat was clear. Leave, or I'll make you leave. Evelyn tried to stand. Her legs buckled on the first attempt, and she grabbed the wall for support. Pain shot through her arthritic knees, sharp and vicious. She tried again, moving in slow motion, her whole body trembling with effort. It took 3 tries before she was upright, swaying slightly, her purse clutched against her chest. "I'm going," she whispered. "I'm going." She shuffled out of the ATM alcove and onto the sidewalk. The early morning street was nearly empty, a few cars passing, a jogger in expensive running gear who didn't look at her, a woman walking a small dog who crossed to the other side of the street when she saw Evelyn. She stood there for a moment, dizzy and disoriented, trying to figure out what to do next. She could walk around the block and come back. She could find a bench somewhere. She could. "Hey, you still here?" Marcus had followed her out, his expression hardening. "I said move along. That doesn't mean stand on the corner. I'm just catching my breath. Move. Now. Or, I'm calling the police." Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back, furiously crying was weakness, and she couldn't afford weakness. She started walking, her legs barely supporting her weight, moving away from the bank and the money she desperately needed. Behind her, she heard Marcus mutter something into his radio, probably reporting that he'd successfully removed the homeless woman. Another problem solved. She made it half a block before her legs gave out completely. There was a bus stop with a small bench, and she collapsed onto it, her body shaking uncontrollably. Not just from the cold anymore, from exhaustion, from hunger she hadn't eaten since yesterday morning, from the crushing weight of being 94 years old and utterly alone in a world that had decided she didn't matter. She sat there as the sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange that would have been beautiful if she'd had the energy to appreciate them. People started appearing, commuters heading to work, students heading to school. They walked past her without looking. Or they looked and quickly looked away, as if homelessness might be contagious. At 8:45, Evelyn stood up. Her legs screamed in protest, but she forced them to work. She walked back toward First National Bank, moving slowly, carefully, trying not to draw attention. The bank would open in 15 minutes. She just needed to get inside, get to her money, get to the pharmacy. Marcus was still there, standing near the entrance. He saw her coming, and his face darkened. "I told you to move along. Also Combe, I-7. The bank is about to open. I'm a customer. I have every right. You have the right to leave." "That's it." He stepped forward, positioning himself between Evelyn and the door. "Please." Evelyn's voice broke. "Please. I just need to access my account. I need my medication. I need." "Lady, I don't care what you need. You're making customers uncomfortable. You need to go." "What customers? The bank isn't even open yet. It will be in 10 minutes, and I'm not having you here when it does." They stood there. This young security guard and this 94-year-old woman, locked in a standoff that shouldn't have been happening. Evelyn felt something shift inside her. The determination that had gotten her through the night was hardening into something else. Anger. Righteous, burning anger. "I was a nurse for 43 years, she said, her voice steady now despite the trembling in her hands. "I saved lives. I paid my taxes. I never asked for handouts. I earned every penny in that bank, and you're telling me I can't access my own money because I make people uncomfortable?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, for the last time, my name is Evelyn. Evelyn Rose Carter. Not ma'am. Not lady. Not homeless woman. Evelyn." "Evelyn, then, you need to leave." "Or what? You'll call the police? Have me arrested for trying to go to my own bank?" "If I have to." They stared at each other. Then Marcus reached for his radio. That's when the manager arrived. Bradley Hoffman, regional manager for First National Bank, pulled into the parking lot at 8:53 in his silver Lexus. He was 41 years old, wearing a suit that cost more than Evelyn's monthly Social Security check, and he was already irritated because he'd gotten caught in traffic and his morning coffee was cold. He grabbed his briefcase from the passenger seat, locked the car with a beep that echoed across the parking lot, and walked briskly toward the entrance. He had a 9:30 conference call with corporate, a loan review meeting at 10:15, and a disciplinary issue with one of the tellers that needed handling. His day was packed, and he was already running 7 minutes behind schedule. He was 3 feet from the door when he saw them: Marcus, his security guard, and some old woman having what looked like an argument. Bradley's irritation spiked. This was exactly the kind of thing that slowed everything down, that created problems, that made his job harder than it needed to be. He walked right past Evelyn without looking at her. Stepped around her, actually, his expensive leather shoes clicking on the pavement, his eyes focused on the door and the day ahead. He didn't see her face. Didn't see the tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. Didn't see her arthritic hands clutching that small leather purse. Didn't see her at all. Evelyn watched him pass. Watched him unlock the door. Watched him disappear inside without a backward glance. And something inside her, that last fragile thread, snapped. "Excuse me." Her voice was louder than she'd intended, powered by desperation and fury. "Excuse me. I need help." Bradley stopped just inside the door. He turned slowly, his face already arranged in the expression he used for difficult customers: polite but distant, professional but firm. He looked at Evelyn properly for the first time, taking in her worn coat, her disheveled hair, her trembling hands. His expression shifted to something colder. "The bank opens at 9, he said through the glass door. "You'll need to wait." "I've been waiting since 3 in the morning." Evelyn's voice cracked. "I've been here for 6 hours. I need to access my account. I'm a customer. My name is Evelyn Carter. Account number." She fumbled with her purse, trying to pull out her ATM card, but her hands were shaking too badly. Bradley glanced at his watch. 8:55. He had 28 minutes before his conference call. "Ma'am, banking hours are 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. We'll be open in 5 minutes. You can wait." "I've been waiting." "Your security guard keeps making me leave." Bradley looked at Marcus, who shrugged. "She was loitering in the ATM alcove since before I got here. I told her to move along." He won't let me wait." Evelyn was fully crying now, tears streaming down her face, her body shaking with cold and emotion. "I just need my money. I need my medication. Please, I'm 94 years old. I've been outside all night. I just need." "Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but you need to calm down." Bradley's voice had taken on that patronizing tone people use with children and the elderly. "Making a scene isn't going to help." "I'm not making a scene. I'm asking for help, and I'm telling you the bank opens at 9. In 4 minutes. You can wait 4 minutes." "But he won't let me wait." Evelyn gestured at Marcus. "He keeps threatening to call the police." Bradley sighed, the sound sharp with exasperation. He stepped back outside, letting the door close behind him. He looked at Evelyn with thinly veiled annoyance. "What exactly is the problem here?" "The problem is I've been outside all night because I have nowhere to go. The problem is I need my blood pressure medication, and it costs $94, and I have the money in my account, but I can't get to it because your security guard won't let me near the building. The problem is I'm being treated like a criminal when I'm a customer who's been banking here for 23 years. Bradley's eyes flickered to Marcus. "Has she been causing problems?" "She was sleeping in the ATM alcove. I asked her to leave. She came back. I wasn't sleeping. I was waiting, and I came back because the bank was about to open." Bradley looked at his watch again. 8:58. He had a decision to make, and he made it quickly. The way he made all decisions based on what would cause him the least amount of hassle. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises." Evelyn stared at him. "What?" "You're causing a disturbance. You're making our staff uncomfortable. I need you to leave." "But I'm a customer. I have an account here. My money is in there. I don't care if you have an account or not. Right now, you're trespassing." The word hit Evelyn like a physical blow. Trespassing. On the property of a bank that held her money. Money she'd earned. Money that was legally, rightfully hers. "This is my bank," she whispered. "I've had an account here since 2001. I've never missed a payment, never bounced a check, never caused any trouble. And you're telling me I'm trespassing? I'm telling you that your behavior this morning is unacceptable. You can come back when you're calm and appropriately dressed." His eyes raked over her worn coat, her disheveled appearance, and Evelyn saw the judgment there. Saw the disgust. Appropriately dressed? Her voice was rising again. I'm wearing the only coat I own. I'm homeless. I lost my house 3 years ago to this bank, actually. First National foreclosed on me, and now you won't even let me access my own money? Other people were arriving now. Bank employees pulling into the parking lot, early customers waiting for the doors to open. They were watching. Phones were coming out. A middle-aged woman near her car had started recording. Bradley noticed the audience, and his expression hardened further. Marcus, please escort this woman off the property. If she refuses to leave, call the police. You can't do this. Evelyn's voice was shrill now, panic overriding everything else. You can't keep me from my own money. I can, and I am. You're clearly not in a state to conduct banking business. Come back another time. He turned to go back inside. Evelyn did something she hadn't done in 6 months of homelessness, 6 months of degradation and suffering. She reached out and grabbed Bradley's arm. Please. The word came out as a sob. Please, I'm begging you. I need my medication. Without it, my blood pressure, I could have a stroke. I could die. Please, just let me make a withdrawal. 5 minutes, that's all I need. Bradley jerked his arm away from her touch as if she'd burned him, his face twisted with revulsion. Do not touch me. Marcus, get her out of here. Now. Marcus stepped forward, reaching for Evelyn's arm. She stumbled backward, trying to avoid his grasp, and her legs, those 94-year-old legs that had carried her through a 6-hour wait in the cold, finally gave out completely. She fell. It wasn't a dramatic fall. No flailing arms or cry of surprise. She just crumpled, her body folding in on itself, and hit the pavement hard. Her purse flew from her hands, contents scattering across the concrete. The photograph of Arthur skittered away. Bills fluttered in the morning breeze. Her ATM card landed near a storm drain. For a moment, everyone froze. Evelyn lay there on the cold pavement, stunned. Her hips screamed where it had connected with concrete. Her hands were scraped and bleeding. She couldn't catch her breath. The impact had knocked the wind out of her. She tried to push herself up, but her arms wouldn't cooperate. 94-year-old arms that had held countless newborns, that had administered life-saving medications, that had embraced her husband and sons and grandchildren, now couldn't even lift her own weight. Oh my God, someone said. The woman who'd been recording. Marcus knelt down. Ma'am, are you okay? Evelyn couldn't answer. Couldn't breathe. Tears and snot ran down her face. Every part of her hurt. But worse than the physical pain was the humiliation lying on the ground like garbage while people stared and filmed and judged. Bradley stood there, his face pale. For a second, just a second, Evelyn thought she saw something human flicker across his expression. Concern. Guilt. But then it was gone, replaced by calculation. He was thinking about liability, about lawsuits, about how this would look. Marcus. Call an ambulance, he said. No. Evelyn managed to gasp out. No ambulance. Can't afford. Ma'am, you need medical attention. I need my money. She was sobbing now, great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. I need my medication. That's what I need. A man in a business suit stepped forward from the small crowd that had gathered. He was maybe 60, distinguished looking, with silver hair and kind eyes. Sir, is there a reason you can't just let this woman into the bank? It's 9 o'clock. You're open. Bradley turned to him, clearly annoyed. This is bank business. I don't need input from. I'm Dr. Richard Chen. I'm a physician, and I'm telling you that this woman is in medical distress. She needs help, not harassment. I'm not harassing her. She fell. She fell because your security guard was manhandling her. I barely touched her, Marcus protested. Dr. Chen knelt beside Evelyn, his hands gentle as he checked her pulse. Ma'am, can you hear me? I'm a doctor. Can you tell me where it hurts? Everywhere, Evelyn whispered. Everything hurts. I'm going to help you sit up, okay? Nice and slow. With Marcus's reluctant assistance, Dr. Chen helped Evelyn into a sitting position. Her hip was agony. But she didn't think anything was broken, just bruised. Everything was bruised. The woman who'd been recording approached, her phone still out. I got the whole thing on video. Him refusing to help her, the security guard grabbing her arm, her falling. All of it. Bradley's face went from pale to gray. You can't, that's private property. You can't record. It's a public sidewalk, actually, and I can record whatever I want. The woman looked at Evelyn with tears in her eyes. Ma'am, what's your name? Evelyn. She managed. Evelyn Carter. Evelyn, I'm Sarah Mitchell. I'm going to make sure everyone sees what happened here today. Okay? More people were gathering now. A teenage boy offered Evelyn a bottle of water. An elderly man was collecting her scattered belongings, the photograph, the money, the ATM card. A woman in nursing scrubs knelt down and wrapped her own jacket around Evelyn's shoulders. I've got you, honey. You're going to be okay. Dr. Chen looked up at Bradley with cold fury. You should be ashamed of yourself. This woman needs medical care and compassion, not to be thrown on the ground like trash. She wasn't thrown. I saw what happened. Everyone here saw what happened. He gestured to the crowd, to the phones that were out, recording. You denied her access to her own money. You had your security guard remove her physically, and when she fell and was clearly injured, your first concern was covering your ass. Bradley's mouth opened and closed. He looked around at all the faces staring at him with disgust and anger, at the phones recording his every word, at Evelyn, still sitting on the pavement, shaking and crying and bleeding. He made another calculation. Let's get her inside, he said abruptly. Marcus, help her up. We'll take her to my office, get her some water, see about getting her checked out. Now you want to help? Dr. Chen's voice was scathing. After she's injured and humiliated, and half the city has it on video, I'm trying to do the right thing here. The right thing would have been letting her into the bank 30 minutes ago when she first asked. Evelyn felt hands on her arms, Marcus and Dr. Chen, lifting her carefully. Her legs didn't want to support her weight. Everything swam in and out of focus. She heard voices arguing, people offering help, Bradley trying to manage the situation. But all she could think about was the photograph of Arthur, now in the hands of the elderly man who'd picked it up. Arthur, smiling at her across 52 years. What would he think of her now? What would he say? Get up, Evelyn. You're stronger than this. But she wasn't. She really wasn't. They got her inside the bank somehow. The fluorescent lights were too bright after the dim morning outside. Everything looked sterile and cold, marble floors, polished counters, leather chairs in the waiting area. Marcus and Dr. Chen guided her to one of those chairs and she sank into it, her body feeling like it might never move again. Bradley disappeared, then returned with a bottle of water and a first aid kit. He handed the water to Evelyn with hands that trembled slightly. Here, drink this. Evelyn took it but couldn't open it. Her arthritic hands were shaking too badly, and the scrapes made gripping painful. Dr. Chen took it from her gently, opened it, and handed it back. She drank, the cold water shocking her throat. The bank was filling up now. Employees arriving for their shifts, customers coming in for morning transactions. They all stared. Some whispered. More phones came out. Bradley stood there awkwardly, clearly out of his depth. Mrs. Carter. Miss, Evelyn corrected automatically. I never remarried after Arthur died. Miss Carter. I apologize for the misunderstanding this morning. Misunderstanding? Dr. Chen's voice was sharp. Is that what we're calling it? Bradley ignored him. If you'd like to make a withdrawal, we can certainly facilitate that. Evelyn looked up at him with those pale blue eyes that had seen so much wars and births and deaths and love and loss. Why now? Why? Why? Her voice was barely a whisper. Why are you helping me now when you wouldn't help me 30 minutes ago? Bradley didn't answer. They both knew why. Because people were watching, because phones were recording, because his job was on the line. I don't want your help, Evelyn said quietly. Not anymore. Miss Carter, please. I want to make my withdrawal and leave. That's all. Bradley nodded quickly, eager to move things along. to get her out of his bank and out of his life. Of course. Marcus, please escort Miss Carter to a teller. I'll go with her, Dr. Chen said firmly. It wasn't a request. Sarah Mitchell, the woman with the phone, stepped forward. Me too. I'm not letting her out of my sight until she's somewhere safe. They walked to the teller counter, this strange procession of Evelyn, Dr. Chen, Sarah, and a visibly uncomfortable Marcus. The teller, a young woman named Jessica who'd been with the bank for 6 months, looked horrified as they approached. Hi, Evelyn said, her voice steadier now. I need to make a withdrawal from my checking account. Of course. Jessica's hands were shaking as she pulled up the account. ID and ATM card, please. Evelyn handed over the card. The elderly man who'd collected her things had returned everything to her purse, even making sure the photo of Arthur was carefully tucked inside. She fumbled for her ID, managed to hand it over. Jessica scanned everything, typed on her keyboard, and then her face changed. Bro. Miss Carter? Yes? Your account. There's a hold on it. See. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Evelyn felt the room tilt. A hold? What kind of hold? Jessica looked miserable. An overdraft hold. Your account shows a negative balance of $63. Until that's cleared, we can't process any withdrawals. That's impossible. Evelyn's voice was rising. My Social Security was deposited yesterday, $1,300. It should be there. Yes, but there were automatic payments that processed overnight. Your phone bill for $42. A medical billing service for $138. And there was an overdraft fee from last month that we've been trying to collect. $300. $300? For what? It says here you were overdrawn by $18 last month. The overdraft fee is $30 per day until it's resolved. It's been... Jessica scrolled through the screen. It's been 10 days. That's $300 in fees. Evelyn couldn't breathe. Her Social Security check, her lifeline, the only thing between her and complete destitution, was gone. Eaten by fees and automatic payments she'd forgotten about or didn't understand. She had nothing. Less than nothing. This can't be happening, she whispered. This can't be happening. Dr. Chen leaned over the counter, his voice dangerous. You're telling me this woman's account has been drained by overdraft fees? Fees that are designed specifically to prey on people who can barely afford to bank with you in the first place? Jessica looked like she wanted to disappear. Sir, I don't make the policies. Get me your manager. Now, he's right there. Jessica pointed at Bradley. Bradley, who'd been watching from near his office door. Dr. Chen turned, and his face was a mask of cold fury. You need to fix this. Right now. Bradley approached slowly, his expression guarded. I'm afraid there's nothing I can do. The fees are automatic. They're in the account agreement. I don't care about your agreement. This woman needs her money, and she'll have access to it as soon as she clears the negative balance. How is she supposed to clear a negative balance when you won't let her access her account? That's not... Bradley stopped, realizing he'd just talked himself into a corner. Evelyn sat in the chair someone had brought her, listening to them argue about her life, her money, her survival. She felt detached, floating somewhere above her body, watching this scene play out like it was happening to someone else. The photograph of Arthur was in her hands again. She stared at his face, at that young man who'd promised to love her forever, and she thought about how tired she was. How very, very tired. Evelyn? Sarah Mitchell had crouched down beside her. Evelyn, stay with me, okay? I'm here. But she wasn't. Not really. We're going to fix this, I promise. You can't fix it. Nobody can fix it. Evelyn's voice was flat, empty. It's broken. Everything's broken. Dr. Chen had turned back to the counter, was speaking rapidly to Jessica. How much does she need to clear the negative balance? $63. Fine, here. He pulled out his wallet, extracted 420s. Apply this to her account. Fortplissin. A bden. Sir, I can't accept cash for. You can and you will. Apply it. Now. Jessica looked at Bradley, who nodded reluctantly. She processed the payment, her fingers flying over the keyboard. The account is now positive. Current balance is $1,174. Dr. Chen turned to Evelyn. Miss Carter, how much do you need? For your medication? $94, Evelyn whispered. Withdraw 200, Dr. Chen told Jessica. Give her some breathing room. Jessica counted out the bills, handed them to Evelyn. $200 in 20s. Evelyn stared at the money like she didn't recognize it. Thank you, she said mechanically. Don't thank me. Get angry. Dr. Chen's voice was gentle, but firm. What happened here today, what this bank did to you, is inexcusable. You don't have to accept it. But Evelyn was beyond anger. She was beyond anything except bone-deep exhaustion. She just wanted to get her medication and find somewhere warm to sleep. Sarah helped her stand. Come on. I'm driving you to the pharmacy, and then we're going to find you somewhere safe to stay. I don't need. Yes, you do. And you're going to let me help you, okay? No arguments. They walked toward the door, this strange group: Evelyn, Sarah, Dr. Chen. Behind them, the bank had gone eerily quiet. Every employee, every customer was watching. Some with pity, some with shame, some with phones still out, still recording. Bradley Hoffman stood near his office, his face ashen. He knew his career had just imploded. He knew that by tomorrow, maybe by this afternoon, those videos would be everywhere. He knew corporate would be calling, demanding explanations, demanding his head on a platter. He knew he'd just become the face of everything wrong with the banking industry, with corporate America, with how we treat the elderly and vulnerable. And he deserved every bit of what was coming. They made it outside into the cool morning air. The sun was fully up now, bright and cheerful, completely at odds with everything that had just happened. Sarah's car was parked nearby, a sensible Honda Civic with car seats in the back. She helped Evelyn into the passenger seat, buckled her in like she was precious cargo. Dr. Chen leaned in through the window. Miss Carter, I want you to see a doctor about your hip. That was a hard fall. You could have a fracture. I can't afford. I'm a doctor. You just saw me. No charge. Here's my card. He pressed it into her hand. Call me. Today. Promise? Evelyn nodded, too tired to argue. Sarah started the car, adjusted the heat. Where's the pharmacy? CVS on 3rd Street. They drove in silence for a few minutes. Evelyn watched the familiar streets pass by, streets she'd walked for decades, streets that felt foreign now. Everything felt foreign. I have a guest room, Sarah said suddenly. In my house. It's small, but it's warm and it's private. You can stay there. As long as you need. Evelyn turned to look at her. Why? Why what? Why are you helping me? You don't know me. Sarah's hands tightened on the steering wheel. My mom was homeless for 2 years before she died. Schizophrenia. She couldn't hold down a job, couldn't manage her medications. My dad had left years before. I was in college, didn't know how to help, didn't even know it was happening until it was too late. She died of pneumonia in a shelter. Her voice cracked. She was 54 years old, and I'll spend the rest of my life wishing I'd done more, been better, paid attention. So when I see someone like you, someone who needs help, I help, because maybe it makes up for all the times I didn't. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears again. I'm sorry about your mother. I'm sorry about what happened to you today. And yesterday. And every day before that, when the system failed you. They pulled into the CVS parking lot. Sarah helped Evelyn out of the car, walked with her into the bright fluorescent interior. The pharmacy counter was at the back. Evelyn approached, handed over her prescription bottle, empty now, needed for the refill information. The pharmacist, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, typed into her computer. That'll be $94. Evelyn handed over the cash. Dr. Chen had made sure she withdrew. The bills felt both heavy and weightless in her hands. While they waited for the prescription to be filled, Sarah's phone started buzzing. She pulled it out, and her eyes widened. Evelyn, you need to see this. She held up her phone. The video Sarah had taken was on Facebook, and it had already been shared 800 times. The comments were flooding in, hundreds of them, most expressing outrage and disbelief. But that wasn't all. Local news stations had picked it up. It was on Twitter, trending in their city. Someone had created a GoFundMe page titled, "Help Evelyn Carter Homeless Nurse Treated Like Criminal." "It's going viral," Sarah whispered. "People are furious." Evelyn stared at the screen, at her own face, haggard and desperate and humiliated, captured in high definition. She saw herself falling, saw herself crying on the pavement, saw Bradley Hoffman's disgusted expression as he pulled away from her touch. The world was watching her worst moment, her complete and utter degradation, and she didn't know whether to feel vindicated or violated. The pharmacist returned with her medication. Evelyn took the bottle, held it in her trembling hands like it was treasure. In a way, it was. It was 30 more days of life. "Come on," Sarah said gently. "Let's get you home." Home. The word was strange. Foreign. Evelyn hadn't had a home in 6 months, but she followed Sarah back to the car, back out into the daylight, and let herself be taken care of for the first time in so long she'd forgotten what it felt like. Sarah's house was in a quiet suburban neighborhood with tree-lined streets and well-maintained lawns. A 2-story colonial with blue shutters and a front porch. Sarah helped Evelyn up the front steps and through the door into a living room that smelled like coffee and vanilla candles. "My husband's at work. Kids are at school. It's just us." Sarah guided Evelyn down a hallway to a small bedroom with soft blue walls and a window that looked out onto the backyard. "This is yours. Bathrooms across the hall. Take a shower if you want. There's clean towels in the closet. I'll make some lunch." Evelyn stood in the doorway of this room, this clean, warm, safe room, and felt something crack open inside her. All the fear and pain and humiliation of the past 6 months came pouring out in great, wrenching sobs. She crumpled, and Sarah caught her, lowered her gently to the bed, and just held her while she cried. "I've got you," Sarah whispered. "I've got you. You're safe now." But even as she said it, they both knew it wasn't true. Not really, because tomorrow would come. And the day after that, and eventually Evelyn would have to leave this temporary sanctuary and face a world that had made it clear she didn't belong anywhere, unless something changed. And it turned out, something was about to change. By noon, the video had been viewed over 1 million times. By 2 p.m., every major news outlet had picked up the story. By 4 p.m., First National Bank's corporate headquarters had issued a statement expressing deep concern and promising a thorough investigation. By 6 p.m., Bradley Hoffman had been placed on administrative leave. By 8 p.m., the GoFundMe page had raised $37,000. Evelyn sat in Sarah's living room, watching herself on the evening news, and couldn't process it. The anchor was talking about systemic elder abuse, about the housing crisis, about healthcare costs and Social Security inadequacy, about how Evelyn Carter had become the face of America's failure to care for its elderly. "They're talking about me," she said numbly. "They're talking about the problem," Dr. Chen said. He'd stopped by after his shift at the hospital, wanting to check on Evelyn's hip. It was badly bruised, but not fractured. Small mercies. "You're just the catalyst." Sarah's husband Mark was on his laptop at the dining room table. "Evelyn, you need to see this. People are demanding justice. They're calling their representatives. They're organizing protests outside First National branches. Someone started a petition to strengthen elder abuse laws, and it already has 200,000 signatures." Evelyn felt dizzy. "I don't understand. I just wanted my medication." I know," Sarah said gently. "But sometimes one person's story resonates. Sometimes it takes something this blatant, this cruel, to make people wake up and pay attention." The doorbell rang. Sarah went to answer it and came back with a serious-looking woman in a business suit. "Evelyn, this is Linda Morrison. She's an attorney." Linda sat down across from Evelyn, her expression kind but professional. "Miss Carter, I'd like to represent you. Pro bono." What First National Bank did to you and what Bradley Hoffman specifically did constitutes elder abuse, discrimination, and potentially assault. You have grounds for a substantial lawsuit. I don't want to sue anyone, Evelyn said tiredly. I just want to be left alone. I understand, but this isn't just about you anymore. It's about setting a precedent. It's about making sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. Linda leaned forward. How many other elderly people are being preyed on by overdraft fees right now? How many are being denied access to their own money? How many are being treated like criminals for having the audacity to be old and poor? You have a platform now. You can make a difference. Evelyn looked at Arthur's photograph, which she'd propped on the coffee table. What would he say? What would he want her to do? Fight, Evelyn. You've never been a quitter. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Okay. The next weeks were a blur. The lawsuit was filed. The story continued to dominate news cycles. First National Bank's stock price dropped. Bradley Hoffman was fired. The bank settled for $1.2 million rather than face a trial that would have destroyed what was left of their reputation. The GoFundMe raised over $200,000. Congress held hearings on elder abuse and banking practices targeting vulnerable populations. And through it all, Evelyn lived in Sarah's guest room, slowly remembering what it felt like to be human again. She saw doctors, got her medications regulated, gained back some of the weight she'd lost. Her hands still shook. The Parkinson's wasn't going away, but they shook a little less. Physical therapy helped her hip heal and strengthened her legs. She could walk without pain again. Her sons came to visit. Michael flew in from Seattle. Daniel drove up from Chicago. They sat in Sarah's living room and cried and apologized for not knowing, for not being there, for failing her so completely. Evelyn forgave them because that's what mothers do. But she also told them the truth that they'd let their own lives become more important than checking on the woman who'd given them life. That success and money mean nothing if you forget where you came from. It was hard to hear. But they heard it. With the settlement money, Evelyn bought a small condo. 1 bedroom, 1 bath, just enough space for her and her memories. She furnished it simply, comfortable chair, good bed, pictures of Arthur and her boys on every wall. She could afford her medications now, could afford food and heat, and the small luxuries that make life bearable. But she didn't stop there. She used most of the money to start a foundation. The Evelyn Carter Fund for Homeless Seniors. It provided emergency housing, medical care, and financial assistance to elderly people who'd fallen through the cracks. Sarah ran it, quit her job to do it full-time. Dr. Chen served on the board. Linda Morrison handled the legal work. Within 6 months, they'd helped over 300 people. Emma from Schmitz, remember her? Volunteered every weekend. Funny how these stories connect. Evelyn became an advocate, testified before Congress about elder poverty, spoke at conferences about banking reform, gave interviews about the homelessness crisis. She hated being in the spotlight, still felt uncomfortable with cameras and attention, but she did it anyway because Arthur was right. She'd never been a quitter. 1 year after that morning outside First National Bank, Evelyn stood at a podium in City Hall as the mayor signed new legislation protecting elderly residents from predatory banking practices and guaranteeing emergency shelter access regardless of curfew times. The room was packed with reporters and advocates and people whose lives had been changed by her foundation. A year ago, Evelyn said, her voice steady despite her trembling hands, I was invisible. I was a problem to be removed, not a person to be helped. I'd worked my entire life, served my community, raised my family, and somehow I'd become disposable. But the truth is, I wasn't invisible. None of us are. We're just being ignored. And there's a difference. She paused, looking out at all those faces. What happened to me wasn't special. It happens every day to thousands of elderly people across this country. People who paid their taxes and raised their children and fought in wars and built communities. People who deserve better than to be stepped over on their way to a bank. People who deserve dignity. Another AP in Meaty FS. Her eyes found Sarah in the crowd, then Dr. Chen, then Linda. Her sons were there too, both of them. Even Jessica, the teller from First National, had come to support her. I'm standing here today not because I'm special, but because someone decided to see me. Chen didn't have to intervene. Linda Morrison didn't have to take my case. But they did, and that made all the difference. She gripped the podium, her arthritic hands white-knuckled but strong. So, I want to ask all of you something. When you see someone struggling, someone old or poor or different, do you see them? Really see them? Or do you look away because it's easier, because it's uncomfortable, because you don't want to get involved? Because I'm telling you right now, the next time you look away, that could be someone's mother, someone's grandmother, someone who saved lives or taught children, or built the bridges you drive over. Someone who matters. The room was silent. We can do better. We have to do better. And it starts with seeing each other. All of us. Every single one. The applause was thunderous. People stood. Cameras flashed. But Evelyn just stood there. 95 years old now. Still trembling. Still tired. Still carrying the weight of everything that had happened. But standing. Still standing. After the ceremony, after the photos and the interviews and the handshakes, Evelyn went back to her small condo. She made tea in Arthur's mug, sat in her comfortable chair, looked at his photograph. I did it, she told him. I didn't quit. And somewhere, in whatever place the dead go to watch the living, Arthur smiled. So here's what I need to know. When you see someone sleeping outside a bank, outside a store, on a street corner, do you see them? Or do you see a problem? Because Evelyn Carter was a nurse for 43 years. She saved lives. And 700, 700, and she ended up on a sidewalk being stepped over by a man in a $1,000 suit who couldn't be bothered to see her as human. That man lost his job, lost his reputation, and good. But what about the rest of us? What about the millions of tiny moments every day when we choose comfort over compassion? When we look away because it's easier? Drop a comment right now and tell me, what would you have done if you'd been at that bank? Would you have spoken up? Would you have helped? Or would you have hurried past, eyes down, pretending you didn't see? And more importantly, what are you going to do the next time you see someone who needs help? Because there will be a next time. There always is. Hit subscribe if this story changed something in you. Share it with someone who needs to remember that every elderly person used to be young, that every homeless person used to have a home. That dignity isn't something you earn, it's something you're born with, and it never expires. Let's make sure what happened to Evelyn never happens again. Let's make sure we see each other. All of us.